Earlier in the program, I mentioned use cases that agencies are pursuing with Gen AI. At some agencies, those use cases number in the hundreds. Ravi Raghava is Chief Technology Officer for the Civilian Business Group at SAIC. He says the federal government's uptake on generative AI is revolutionary.
So we are seeing rapid adoption of AI across the industry, and there are several use cases that we can talk about. Primarily from a public sector and government perspective, I see the adoption in enhancing citizen experience. For example, generative AI can essentially be used to process claims, benefits, records management, all of this at a very accelerated pace. And we are seeing significant traction in that space. And another area where I do believe that this is going to, over the next 2-3 years, we will see increased adoption of generative AI in application development, software development lifecycle, coding, it's going to be accelerated using generative AI, and unit testing, deployments. All these are essentially going to drive efficiencies because we see automation using generative AI.
One of the themes that we're hearing about as we're at this conference, this event, is balancing speed and responsibility. Agencies talk all the time about responsible use of AI. It's almost like it's part of the title, the way that they're using the terminology now. What's the right way to achieve that balance of getting the work done, getting these prototypes in some cases into production and so on, but also doing it in a responsible way?
A great question, actually. So the pace at which the evolution is happening and the acceleration of services and offerings that are being offered to the industry is significant. And I do see the challenge. There are some challenges, naturally, because from the government perspective, so the government should put public interest as a priority, and security, and then ethics. So these are kind of three core elements that are kind of very important. And from a policy perspective, government needs to establish frameworks, ethical standards, which would essentially include efficacy, fairness, any unintended bias, and all that, right? So these are some of the challenges. And from a procurement standpoint, so typically, our procurement cycles are fairly long. So ideal thing would be to have short impact, modular contracting options, wherein industry can essentially make use of those. For example, other transaction authorities, the OTAs are a great way to do this short stint, wherein, we can try this out. So that will be a quick win, both for the industry as well as for the government. And also adding on to that, you can look at challenge-based acquisitions and solicitations. Those are extremely good way to kind of test few of the offerings to see if that is essentially going to work for you. And in that way, you are able to choose the best of the best in a shorter time frame instead of waiting for the longer procurement cycles.
Is it encouraging maybe that the agencies are saying the same thing as far as being able to speed up the acquisition process, that maybe there'll be a push from industry, push from government too? Because I just had a CIO tell me recently, I'd really like to just be able to try this stuff out in a very short period of time. And by the time I get to actually be able to use it, it's kind of been overcome by events, whatever the technology may be.
No, you are absolutely spot on. I think we are seeing it both from the government as well as from the industry. I think having very agile procurement processes in this space is essentially going to help the government, because by the time the actual traditional cycles are essentially complete, there are several new offerings and services that are already out in the market, and the government should essentially be leading it, trying to take advantage of it. Some barriers that I do see outside of procurement are limited availability of trained resources in artificial intelligence, right? So both from the industry as well as that. I think government needs to upskill the force, invest in talent acquisition, collaborate and partner with the industry. In that way, they can bridge the gap that we see.
We have just over a minute left. Have you seen anybody yet, and you can name them or not, but has anybody in your view cracked the code on any of those challenges that you've talked about so far? The upskilling folks, then preparing the talent, or speeding the acquisition process, any of that?
Absolutely. So there are agencies like the GSA and NASA. They are kind of adopting those approaches, and we are seeing agencies, adopt more of such procurements, wherein they are able to put those into use. I would also like to appreciate the industry as well. We work with all the hyperscalers and technology partners, AWS being one of the great partners that we have. So we collaborate with them actively to co-build solutions and services that can essentially accelerate the modernization and bring in AI services to drive more efficiencies with the government.